Welcome everyone to another episode of Podium Stories. Today I have a really special guest in the building, somebody that I've been wanting to really interview for the last week and a half after reading more about him. His name is Erik Huberman. He's the founder and CEO of Hawke Media, one of the fastest growing marketing consultancies in the United States. They've grown from 7, and if I'm not mistaken, to over 160 people in 5.5 years with no outside funding, no debt, completely bootstrapped. So I relate to that as a bootstrapped agency owner myself. He's a serial entrepreneur, a marketing expert, and a thought leader in the world of digital marketing, entrepreneurship, sales, and business. Erik, thank you so much for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So before you started Hawke Media, I read that you had run and grown different e-commerce companies.
Yeah.
So tell me more about the differences between growing an e-commerce company and an agency. And then we'll talk about the similarities, no matter the industry business model. But let's start with what's different. And
good question. There's obviously a lot different, but I'd say the core parts that I've seen are different. First off, just the fundamental, it's B2B or B2C. So, right. The B2B aspect with an agency or any other B2B business, a lot of it can be driven by relationships and driven by meeting the right person, et cetera. And you can really drive revenue through network. You can't really do that with a B2C company. It's a lot harder. You can do it if you're going into retail stores and you know the head buyer at Walmart or whatever it is. But for direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands, comes down to marketing, which is where I got my chops and why I had to learn how to market things online really well. So that would be probably the main difference is customer acquisition. And then from another big difference just between product company and service business is the working capital needs. There's a reason a lot of those companies raise money or grow slowly is, you need money to create the product to then sell it. Right. And a lot of times you can't get the terms you can't get terms that are long enough and take enough risk to grow as fast. Whereas with a service business, they say it's not as scalable, but frankly, I disagree. And I've got proof in the pudding here. Yeah. If you can build a good onboarding and recruiting and training process, you can scale it. It's funny. I always hear services businesses aren't scalable. And then you have Accenture with 400,000 people after 30 years of business. Like, come on, it's doable. I'd say that, again, the lack of need for working capital in a service business is really helpful. The ability to be able to sell B2B is, fits more with my skill set. You just need a lot more support to build an e-commerce business. And if you want to be scrappy about it, you just have to do it and do it organically. You can do that, but a lot of times it just takes a grind and it takes being, really scrappy to do it.
Yeah. So I started my first year in business. I started an e-commerce selling basketball gear and it went horrible. And then it was trash. And then I started my agency 4 years ago, and now we run doing basically content marketing for CEOs. But there's some things that remain true for e-commerce and for service-based business. So what were those things for you that were still true no matter the industry or business model?
Yeah, you're still, working with people. You're still operating in margins. The difference, the main difference is your people or your product with a service business, and your product is your product with a product business. So you're still looking at gross margins. You're still operating a P&L. You're still managing people, whether it's the people helping sell and manage the supply chain of your product or the people actually delivering your service. And, so just overall management of a business is similar. The intricacies of how it operates is different, but yeah, you're still, there's a lot of similarities too. If you're a good savvy business owner, you can look at the operation of an agency or a product business and probably understand it.
Makes sense. So one of the topics that I really wanted to dive in today with you was about that growth that you guys have had and the changes that has affected as a company as well, and you personally, right? So I read a quote from one of your team members that was interviewed, and she said that restructuring leadership from a flat management approach into a hierarchy was one of the things that you guys did, right? Because you started with 7 people, a SWAT team with each their own vertical, and you guys had to change that as you grow. So can you walk me a bit more on that hierarchy change?
Yeah, it happened pretty organically. And then, at times we, sort of ripped the Band-Aid and made bigger changes along the way. But, as you mentioned, we had a little SWAT team of 7 people, each with their own expertise. So it was like a Facebook marketer, email marketer, et cetera. And then we needed 2 email marketers, and we needed 3. And one of them needed to lead the other 2. And it's just like, it started to become hierarchical at that point. And it's just what we've seen is in our business, at least, it takes about in the way we operate currently, and we're always trying to optimize this, but you need a manager for about every 7 people to be efficient right now, to make sure that to give people the amount of time they need from management to like really dive in, training, ongoing, just development. They need that kind of time. And so, because our people are very high functioning people. And so to get the most out of them, we want to make sure that we are high touch with them too. And so that means that, again, every time we add 7 people, we need to add management. And if a team goes from 12 to 14, now we need a manager up there. And then if we end up with teams going from, we have 3 teams go to 7 teams, now we need a manager to manage the managers. And the layers just build out as you build your headcount.
Right. That's interesting because we're at 5 people, and I do see that number like being close to at the point that we're going to need one, especially in the early days when you have to introduce managers and players in the middle. Did that account on you on your pricing and on the clients that you were after to make sure that the margin still worked?
Well, the fortunate part about me starting this is this is my 5th business.
Right.
So I thought about scalability from the beginning. And so we never got that surprised by oh God, we have to add expenses in here, because I knew already that I had to bake in a bunch of layer to scale to where I wanted. Now, that doesn't mean we haven't had to make adjustments at this point, 7 years into it. But in the beginning, it wasn't that hard to add in those layers because of how I had built it.
Makes sense. Tell me about the offering, right? Because you started in a very a la carte offering for the clients. You have to, at one point, we're okay, we need to productize it a little bit more or define boundaries better.
It was always productized. So we still have a very similar offering to what we started with. We have more offering, but we've stuck to that because the reason I built this hasn't changed, which is accessibility to great marketing is really difficult. And it's just, whether it's just the convoluted nature of it or the lack of talent out there, the snake oil salesmen, the long contracts from bigger agencies, the high barriers to entry, all of it just pissed me off. And so that's what drove us to build this. I just sold my second e-commerce company. I didn't have any real impetus to start an agency, but just, it was needed. And so that's why we built it. And the timing was right, everything. And so that we've stuck to that. We've stuck to our mission. We've stuck to our core values. And so with that, we have pretty much have the same offering we did 6 years ago, with some nuance to it. But that doesn't change that much. It's stayed the same because we're very consultative. We go into a brand, we tell them exactly what they need, but then our team can be super flexible. As you mentioned, everything's a la carte, everything's month to month. And we've stuck to that.
I love that. What about in terms of, because I'm asking because we're at a point where we're trying to scale as well. So there are some challenges that we're facing personally and our listeners are probably facing as well. What about in terms of communication and culture, right? Because when you start, you have 7 people, everybody knows everybody. What about when you have that number scales 10 times, right? How does that change for you?
Every time you double, your culture changes, and you have to be okay with your culture changing. It's just a different business. It's just how it works. We were 7 people sitting around one conference table being scrappy.
Right.
That is a culture. Then by the end of that year, we were 17 with a couple managers, and it's just it's different. And at this point, we've got 3 offices around the country. We've got 150, 60 people, and we're a decent sized business now. It is different. It doesn't mean your core values have to change. It doesn't mean culture is. It has a lot of aspects to it. Your culture has to change as the business changes, and the business has changed. At this point, we're managing 500 companies marketing. When we're managing 8 companies marketing, it's a very different type of interaction culture. So that shift you just have to be ready for and accept. My business partner actually put it pretty well. College was super fun, wasn't it? That was a good time in our life. We're never going to experience that again. Right. That's okay. What we were then is not what we are now. And that is how company cultures are. As you scale, as you change, your culture changes. The way your people operate change. Bigger companies, you have to have more process. You have to account for the lowest common denominator. And we try to keep that lowest common denominator high, but you still have to have some processes in place where when you're 5 people and you're watching what everyone's doing, you don't need shit. So that's a big part of the cultural shift. But the core values and the overall vision of the company doesn't necessarily have to change. What we actually got way more focused and communicative on our core values and on our mission. Our mission hasn't changed, but now we actually know how to articulate it. And so now we really harp on it. We repeat it constantly. We talk to our people about it. And that's been a godsend because now we've retained the employees that are really aligned with the mission of the company and like to be a part of it. And they're gung ho. Like there is people that bleed Hawk red, so to speak, because they know what it stands for. When we were used to say like, yeah, we're a la carte month to month, outsourced CMO, like that's not a mission. It's great offering. Your CEO, it resonates, but our mission, which is accessibility to great marketing for everyone, if you care about that, you want to be a part of Hawk. If you don't, then you're going to be there or not. You're going to be, working for a paycheck. That's fine. But the people that now we have people that resonate with the mission of the company, which really helps strengthen the culture.
I love that. Tell me about yourself and how your role has changed, Erik, from day one to today, right? Because as the team changes and the company changes, your role also changes. So tell me about, for example, what skills does the company need from you today that didn't need when it started?
Yeah. The sort of deal making wasn't as important. Like I was a salesperson, so I was pretty much the main sales driver for 3.5 years. I just waved the flag, beat the drum, closed deals, brought in business, constantly was out and about. That was me. And and I 3.5 years in, this is a true story. 2017 was 3.5 years in, summer 2017, and my wife and I booked a trip and went to Saint-Tropez, stopped through Cannes, not knowing it was going to be the Cannes Film Festival, but happened to land there ended up at the most ridiculous party there, had to buy a tux last minute. We got a random friend saw on Instagram I was in Cannes, invited me to the top celebrity party there, I forgot the name of the jewelry company, but one of the biggest diamond companies in Italy that was in France that was hosting, and did this crazy party, and then got invited to Monaco, went to the Grand Prix. It was the most ostentatious fucking week of my life.
Yeah, the Grand Prix Monaco is top notch, and that's awesome.
Yeah, we watched it from a balcony, looking down on the track, in a beautiful apartment. It was, champagne on flowing. It was awesome. But we're sitting up on my buddy met us in Monaco, and he had a hotel room overlooking the whole bay, and we went up and hung out with him. And I'm looking at these $500 million boats, and I'm like, not that I want one of those, but the way I work right now, running, being the salesperson, I'm at capacity. I can't work harder. I already work as hard as possible because I don't mind working hard. And what I'm doing right now will never allow me to buy one of those. Not that I'm that's my mission, but I want the option.
Right.
And so it shifted my mindset into how I ran my company. And literally I came back from that trip and I offloaded all my potential deals and clients to my sales team and just said, you guys are in charge now. We dipped, that was end of June. July and August, we dipped as a business, and we just kind of held on tight, and then everything started growing again. And, we've grown 5 times since that year. We're 5x bigger since 2017. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So it worked. And, we're 10 times bigger than we did in 2016. So that year we doubled, and we kept doubling. And so that, it was the right decision. And so that was my role then changed to being more just focused on lead generation. I'm just going to try to bring in as many business and be the face of the brand. So I'm going to work on, I spent second half of 2017 and a little bit of 2018, really trying to just be the sort of the celebrity of the company and get my name out there as much as possible and driving business. And hired a few people and executives, start taking other things off my plate. I'm also responsible for the way we market the company. Hired a CMO, hired a bunch of people, hired a head of sales, started to realize that head of sales has done great. Head of marketing did not. He was out very quickly. And I realized I am still a great marketer, and I should I don't want to offload everything, which was where I was swinging too far the other way. So at this point, and that's 2 years ago. So then you fast forward and, I'd say still a third of my time is, focused on our own growth. And so it's me speaking, being on podcasts, et cetera. It's being on our daily sales and marketing meetings and helping strategize new campaigns and initiatives, helping drive them, being that guy that's helping push the brand. It's a third working with our executive team on just the overall company mission and what we're doing, and spending time with our head of services, our head of HR, our head of sales, head of finance, and really just managing the business. I have a great COO too, but I've realized me being in the weeds too is worth it. Right. There's always something I can affect. And then about a third of my time at this point is on M&A. We get to a scale where you really see when agencies hit around 15 plus million in revenue, their scale starts to sometimes, a good portion of them, if they want to still grow fast, it comes through acquisitions. And so we're in the process of rolling out a lot more diligent of a process, but we've bought 4 agencies at this point. So that became, so now my role, just to recap, is a third promotional, a third operational, and a third M&A, basically.
So a few questions from a few different things that we touch.
Yeah.
Part of it, you mentioned your personal brand, right? And all our business comes from my personal brand because that's something that we offer for our clients. So I had to walk the talk. But how has that personal brand helped you generate new business? Or do you even call it personal brand, or is it just reputation?
It's both. I actually think there are in the way I define them, there's some nuances that are separate the two. Personal brand, you can have a massive personal brand and a shitty reputation.
Right.
But there's plenty of the like self-help gurus. I'm going to call one out because I think he's full of shit. Is Ty Lopez?
Oh, I hate that guy.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
He fucks up my YouTube videos.
Yeah. Yeah. Big personal brand, terrible reputation, and probably rightfully so. And so I think both are incredibly important. Like our reputation is also a very big part of why we're successful. But personal brand, it came down to something really simple. I wanted, when anybody thinks I need marketing help or a friend says I need marketing help, they can't think of anyone but me. And that has been what I've marched on for 7 years is I tell people directly, I get my name out there, I stay top of mind, I do everything I can to make sure that when someone goes, shit, I need marketing help, or hey, my friend needs marketing help, oh, you got to talk to Erik. And it works. I mean, I get intros from some of the biggest executives in LA because I've built myself as I'm the marketing guy. And that is personal brand in a nutshell. It's not my fucking Instagram followers, which by the way, I think I have 4,500. It's not like but I can tell you that like several times a day, I get an email with, hey, Erik, this is my friend XYZ. They need help with marketing. Can you talk to them? Several times a day. So that is a gift that keeps on giving. That it's, we even talked, we had an internal like sales leads meeting last week about, how do we juice it, et cetera. And the biggest effect on our inbound lead generation for the company is how active I'm being and speaking at conferences and being on podcasts, et cetera.
Awesome.
Which we're a 160 person company, and I'm still driving it as an individual being active. So yeah, it's Gary Vaynerchuk. I talked to his team today. They launched Sasha Group, which is their like small and medium business.
Yeah.
My company has done nothing but just Gary's tweets about them, and they've got 20, 30,000 leads that they're working through just because Gary talked about his new Sasha Group.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much power in it, but it's got to be real. Like, so many people like skip a step. They want to take a fucking picture with a Lamborghini and say, I'll make you millions.
Yeah.
And the problem is dumb people will come lining up, and you're going to get the people that also have no money. You all hang out together. I watch it. My buddy calls it the dark side. It's all the like self-help gurus that don't actually have never helped themselves, but they're going to tell you how to make millions of dollars.
Yeah. For us, it's been, so we're a much smaller company, but everything that we generate is inbound from a personal brand. And it's that, right? Like this podcast, LinkedIn content, it really has changed our business. Tell me about when you're saying about like acquiring other agencies, what does an agency have to look like for you to be interested? For other agency owners listening, what do they have to do to be acquired?
Honestly, profitable between 1 and 3 million in revenue, up to 4 million is really our target. Bigger than that, we have a few conversations, but there's got to be some nuance to it because it starts to frankly get hard for us to be able to get a deal that's interesting. Right. And we're looking for people that want to grow with us. So the idea is like we've built out HR and accounting and legal and accounts receivable and all the back office and all the services, and we figured out how to scale this. So can we take a small agency that's on the right trajectory? It's got a really good team, and can we input all of our platform and then together grow it a lot faster than they can do it on their own? And if we can, the deals we strike are usually pretty interesting. If there's not that belief, then there's no point in having a conversation. So it's, if you had, a full back office platform, like a 160 person agency to back you, and you could just go grow the thing. If you could grow a lot faster, we should talk. That's really what it comes down to, because we're open to types of services. We're open to location. One of my biggest initiatives in there is finding agencies in other locations around the country, especially now that no one's in an actual office. Like I want people in Miami's our number one, goal. We already have Boston, New York, LA. I want to open, our top 5 right now are Miami, Dallas, Chicago, Atlanta, and San Francisco. But we're also looking at Boise and Salt Lake City and Denver and honestly in Tulsa, Oklahoma, just because if we have a reason, we'll look at it.
Right.
and anywhere's cheaper than New York, Boston, or LA. So, for us to scale in those territories and put money behind growing in those territories, it's actually a better return on our money. So,
yeah, especially now that the world's virtual and it doesn't really matter what the location is.
Yeah, and this was a plan long before this, but now it's just accelerated it. It's accelerated the opportunity. It's decelerated the movement because it's really hard without me being able to go on the ground in Miami and check out the office.
Right.
But I'm probably going to be fine pretty soon. I'm less concerned personally about what's going on. So I've stayed really careful for 2 months, and now I'm probably going to just get back at it. So yeah, still trying to accelerate that.
Love that. Tell me about building a leadership team or an executive team. What was the process like? What were the things you were looking in those individuals? And what are the mistakes that you made that if you had to do it again, you wouldn't do?
So in the process, we have a decent amount of leaders, but it's always a moving target. I'd say the biggest thing, I'm still learning, but I'd say the biggest thing I've learned is never expect anyone to be a silver bullet. It takes longer to ramp up an executive than it does an employee. So if you're bringing in an executive, expect to spend a long time and a lot of time with them, getting them to a point where they can actually work well with you. My head of finance, I'd say, just because he's doing a great job, I'll call him out. He joined us 9 months ago, I believe. And I'd say the first 3 months, we weren't sure if we were keeping him. And it wasn't him. He's a smart guy. It was just alignment. And you have to and it's my impatience. So you have to just get used to I had to spend a lot of time getting him to work the way I need him to work to run the company. And that's important. Alignment's really important. So finally I stopped acting like a victim and was like, this isn't him being bad at his job. It's me being shitty at getting him up to speed. So let's fix that. So to just work even today, working when something's off from what I need, working with him and just not treating it like, oh God, you didn't do this, and being more. And I tell people this is how you need to work with your vendors, your employees, et cetera. Support them. And so if you're hiring an executive, don't think you just got that piece of the business off your plate. Think you might have gotten that piece of business off your plate in a year or a year and a half, and you're never going to take your eye fully off it as a business owner. I'm never going to take my eye off our P&L because I have a CFO. Because the other piece of this as an owner is no one's ever going to care as much as you, right. Obviously. And it's you could hope and wish and pray all you want. They're just not going to care as much. That doesn't mean they don't give a shit, but it is very different. If my business loses $100,000, I lose $100,000. That is real for me.
Right.
For my CFO, it's oh, okay, well, we should make some changes and fix that so it doesn't happen again. For me, I'm what the fuck just happened?
That's my fucking money, right? And it's your baby, right? Because we put so much effort and tears into it.
Exactly.
So it's hard for us to...
When you're paid last.
Right.
So when you lose money, you don't make any. Everyone else gets their paycheck. So and again, not a jab at anyone that works hard and is an executive. It's just the truth. And so, even through this, I got frankly a little complacent on our expenses up until COVID. Just if someone said, hey, I need this software, fine. I need this, fine. Now, nothing goes out without my approval. Because when COVID hit, we didn't fire people. We haven't done layoffs. We fired a few people, but not layoffs. They needed to be fired.
Yeah.
But when it hit, we didn't do layoffs, but we cut every non-essential expense from a software component, company perks, that kind of stuff. Holy shit, how much money we were wasting on stuff that we don't need at all. Companies functioning great right now. We had a little bit of a dip in April. Now we're totally back on track. It's great. And I talked to my executive team on Monday. I was like, none of that shit's coming back. Just to be clear, fucking Friday massages. Thank God I have an excuse for that, but we're not doing that anymore.
And the kombucha's going and all this shit's going.
If we have a bunch of money in the bank, I will find a fun way to celebrate and share it with everyone. But we're not having recurring expenses for stupid shit.
Right. We're going to go to the Grand Prix in Monaco, but we're not buying more kombucha.
Exactly. You can rent a fucking 737 for $30,000. So we'll go do that. But by the way, that's actually a funny example. That's a year of massages on Fridays. Sure. Instead of that, how about I fly everyone somewhere on our own private plane? What do you prefer? It's that kind of shit. It's just let's just not do that shit anymore.
Yeah. We at a smaller scale, I was the same feeling. I was what the fuck have we been doing lately, man? All this shit wasn't necessary.
As of today, I'm doing another review. I'm we got through the big stuff. Let's do it again. Let's go. Let's call, and this is just for anyone that listens right now, call every vendor and just say, hey, what can you do for us? Because a lot of them are defaulting to discounts. Okay, we'll give you 20% off. Great.
Sure, that's $10,000 that we've saved.
Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah, just do it 20 times, 50 times with all your vendors, and you're going to save real money. It's worth someone in your office doing it. So yeah, we're going through that now. Like we're even like city, we're calling the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. What can you do?
Right.
Like, I'm sure you can do something. We're not using our office and we're paying for fucking trash pickup. Like, what are you going to do?
And you have the leverage now because they're falling. So I have one last question that I want to ask you before we wrap this up. So you have a big team. There's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. How do you deal mentally with that pressure of being a CEO of a growing company, or does that not affect you at all?
Yeah, the question comes up a lot, and my view, I think, is not meant to be conceited, but I think it's an important view to have. My people are just as liable for their own actions as I am. So, like, if our company's failing, it's because either my sales team isn't performing or my services team is churning business. Like, we're all in this together. And that, I hate that cliche now, but it's just the truth. And so, like, if I can't afford to pay my people, it's because it's not just because I screwed up; it's because we did, or there's outside effects. But so I communicate that with my team, like. This is, there's a great speech that I even got shit for it, but have you seen Get Him to the Greek, the movie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That P. Diddy speech of like, oh, you think this meeting's for me? I own 21 kookaroos. It's like, I kind of gave that to my team of like, I'm never worried about my personal bills. I live pretty frugally and I've invested well over the years. Like, I'm fine. I'm going to be fine. But I love building a business. I'm going to build this big because this is what I love to do. It's a passion side of things too. For me, the dollars in the business are more of a scoreboard than anything. For my people, it's real. So I was like, I want to be clear. When I push the sales team to close business, it's to employ you and build this. It's not because I'm just a dick or because I'm padding my pocket. I haven't taken money out of my business in 2 years because I wanted to grow it. So it's like that's just how this works. So I'm just clear about that so that when something like this happens, there was a lot of pressure because I had to be the one to make the call on what we do. Mm-hmm. In that first weekend that this all went down, like the scenarios that I had to run and the fucking work, like I didn't sleep for 4 days trying to figure this out and like my head spinning when I tried to sleep. But once I got through that and figured out like what the options were based on the outcomes, the problem was we didn't know it was coming. So it's like worst case scenario, here's what we're going to do. If like our business cuts in half, here's what happens. If it cuts by 10%, here's what happens. Once I had that planned out, which we should have had anyways, and I recommend every business to have those contingency plans. And it was easy. And it's just like, okay, now we're going to fight for what we can. Our people are going to work. And if they do a great job, we should have a less bad case scenario and we'll be fine. And if they do that, great. And if they don't, well, it's on all of us. And it's just a situation. And again, we haven't had to lay anyone off. But the people that didn't perform, didn't step up, didn't do a good job during this got fired. We weren't flippant about it. We know that we're putting someone into a situation where it's hard to get a job. But I also, again, I don't believe in victims. If someone wasn't pulling their weight during this time, a time when we really need everyone to pull their weight, they're putting all of their coworkers at risk and their jobs at risk and the company at risk. I just didn't have patience for it. So
it's like playing bad in the game 7 of the finals, right? Like if you cannot handle the pressure next year, you have to be out.
Yeah. And it wasn't even like there were people having like some emotional stuff. We actually were patient with them. It was people that like, salespeople that didn't even hit their activity numbers, like didn't even make the phone call numbers they're supposed to make in a day when everyone else is. So it's like, we're not being dicks about this. You're just not working hard enough.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Awesome, Erik. I want to be respectful of your time. I'd love to talk to you for 3 hours, but I appreciate you joining us. I will put the links to the Hawke Media website, to your LinkedIn, to everything below. Yep. And thank you for being here, man.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. And if you're listening, thank you so much. Feel free to subscribe or share or don't, whatever the fuck you want. We appreciate you being here.